Hi, everybody. I am Leslie Kuster, and welcome again to another episode of She Rises. I'm really excited to talk about a really amazing topic today, which is basically communication and how we can improve our communication. But before we start, I just want to remind you that you can always go to my website, which is lesliekuster.com, and grab my free resource list. So go and check it out. Just go there. What I give you in the resource list is the best podcasts, best books. I recommend some coaches, some financial investments, and people to check out. And it's basically my gift to you. So definitely go to lesliekuster.com and get your free download. So let me tell you about today's guest. So we have today Denise Blanc. She is a senior leadership consultant with over 2 decades in organizational development, supporting leaders to unlock their full potential. As a communication expert, a lively storyteller, certified emotional intelligence coach, facilitator, and trained mediator, her work supports individuals and teams to manage strong emotions so they can lean into difficult conversations with candor, curiosity, creativity, and compassion. She is also an author of River Logic, Tools to Transform Resistance and Create Flow in All of Our Relationships, described as a highly insightful guide bringing together the best thinking across domains of neuroscience, mindfulness, and emotional intelligence. And boy, I don't know about you, but boy, do I think we really need better communication skills. So with that, I will bring on Denise to the stage and to She Rises. Denise, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy you are here with us today.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm excited. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I just think also with, where we are at right now in recording, we're in October, we're a month before a huge election. If there's ever a time when communication and is so aggressive, let's put it that way, it's never quite been in my lifetime that I remember quite like this. And then, of course, there's the relationships we have with just people in our lives, with girlfriends, with, partners, with, who we work with. And some of us are good at communication, but most of us really aren't. So I'm really happy you're here. But before we go into you helping us be better communicators, can you just tell us a little bit more about you and what was the impetus, the reason why you really wanted to start doing this? Like, was there anything that happened in your life that made you want to begin to do what you're doing?
Great question. I've thought about this a lot because as a little girl, I was somebody who really spoke my mind. And all through my younger years, I was what I consider honest. Other people considered blunt, what I heard. I really started honing the skills when I heard from a boss, basically, that he thought I was blunt. And I remember thinking, well, no, I'm honest. But learning diplomacy and learning skill in communication is something I really chose to do. And everything I've done from facilitation and mediation and coaching are all communication skills requiring diplomacy and skill. And so I feel like I have learned, we all have sort of maybe something we come in with, and our goal is to kind of burnish it, shine it up, develop it. And I feel like that's kind of what I've done with this work. And the choice to go out on my own and develop a consulting firm, specifically around communication, is really where my sweet spot is.
Yeah. I love it that he said you were blunt because that's also, that also is really off-putting as well when people are too blunt, right? And there's so many cultural. I lived in Switzerland for a long time, and the Germanic culture is very blunt, which could be really like insulting to Americans. All right. So there's a lot of culture stuff too. So being on the blunt side also could really be off-putting to people. So that is really interesting that that was more like your thing, and you thought you were just being honest, and meanwhile you were like off-putting people and maybe scaring them away. So what would you say is the biggest issues that people have with communication, and why don't we even know how to do it right?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems is thinking we are doing it when we're not doing it. Um, there is so much misunderstanding. So, as a mediator, when people come into mediation, the first thing you do is you have them tell their side of the story without interruption. And you could see the other party just reacting, and we give them a pad of paper and a pen, and we say, take all that onto the paper. Um, then it's their turn to share their story. And invariably, there was misunderstanding that
Mm,
if it had been addressed way back when, they would not be sitting in front of a mediator. That so much of our communication is not being heard and received as it was intended. And so that I'd say is one of the biggest problems. And now we have social media and we have people in their own echo chamber. So they're not even hearing the other side. They're just getting amplified in terms of their own ideology and belief. And so, we have kind of a hot mess right now.
yeah. I mean, to me, it sounds like you're talking about listening, aren't you?
I'd say it's the superpower. Listening is our superpower. And now most people think they know how,
Yes.
and they don't.
Okay, well, so how do you listen? Or rather, how do people listen when they aren't really listening? Like, give an example, if you can, of not listening when somebody thinks they actually are listening. And then how do you listen?
Well, first of all, there's kind of this interesting thing that our mind can go 4 times faster than our speech.
Mm,
We could be thinking while someone's talking and think we hear it. Now, might have heard their words, but did we really listen? Probably not. And so slowing things down. I mean, when it's not working, people are often reloading. So they're just pausing, but they're just getting ready to share what they want to share. And that is the most common thing you see. And then there's just like so many distractions right now in life. There's just like everything's moving really fast. There's high stress, there's digital stimuli. But I'd say the biggest thing that's happening for most of us is what we call the monkey mind, where we're thinking, chattering like a little monkey and
yeah.
not really present.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I love that the mind goes 4 times faster because it's really true, right? The mind is there, and then you're not necessarily listening to what was being said right now. So right now I'm going to practice that as we're here in this conversation of just really listening to you. So that's what most people don't do. They're already thinking about what they need to be doing next, and they shouldn't do that any longer. So they should be doing what instead?
So this is a little story I have in my book, River Logic. I don't know if it's true, but it's been spoken many times. It's a professor in the late 1800s comes to a Zen master, Na-in, and he wants to learn Zen. He wants the Zen master to teach him Zen. And so the Zen master begins talking, but every time he speaks, the professor will say, oh yeah, I know that. I know that. That's very much like something, blah, blah, blah. And this continues to happen. And the Zen master stops talking and he decides to pour a cup of tea for the professor. And he's pouring the cup of tea, but he keeps pouring the tea into the cup. And the professor screams, stop, stop. My cup is already full. And the Zen master says, yes, exactly. You are full of your own beliefs and thoughts. How can I teach you Zen unless you empty your cup?
But then what often happens is, even if you're listening, like, emotions come up, right? Like, it comes up kind of in the belly, I think. If somebody's really trying to say something to you that you hurt them, or you had a problem with them, or there was an issue with them or something, and you're like feeling so like, that didn't happen, and I didn't mean that, and do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
I totally
this.
know what you're talking about. Yes, yes.
And there's this feeling, literally, it happens actually in the stomach and in the belly, very much, is rising up of feeling like not seen, not understood, frustrated. So what do you do?
I'm so glad you're asking, because one of the things that you're addressing is something actually in a whole conflict resolution program that I went through. They never really talked about, which really is the kind of nervous system. Like, what do
Mm,
you do with your nervous system in the middle of a high stress, high conflict situation? And we have to have some practices. The one I use all the time is 3 breaths. Like,
mm,
literally simple. As you inhale, you say to yourself, inhale. As you exhale, you say exhale. You do 3 breaths. You've immediately shifted. And then you ask a question. You ask a question to the other person, and that question also allows the shift to be happening. And as they're answering, and again, who knows, maybe there's a way that you can begin to understand the misunderstanding that was going on. But your goal in listening is to understand. That is
to understand them, not
understand.
for them to understand you. That's the hard part, right?
But what's so interesting to me is when you do this and people feel heard, they're much more open and willing, typically, to do the same for you.
Yeah, that's so true.
So it works. It just works.
Yeah.
But the thing about how you do it is, there's a tool that I teach in my book called looping. Now, many of you have heard about, you maybe have done some variation of this, but looping is when they say what they say and you reflect back. So what you meant, what I heard, so it seems like, or I felt like, but you do it as elegantly as you can, trying to get underneath. And they will say yes, and oftentimes, and they will add something. Or maybe you nailed it and they'll say, exactly. But if you didn't nail it, you want to end with, did I capture what you meant? Is that it?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
until they say exactly, you haven't. But once
Okay.
you've done that, they're more likely to listen to you.
And suppose you feel they never listen to you. I mean, I guess this is why and it doesn't quite get resolved. Or when do you know when to let it go? And is there a time to just let it go? Do we really have to resolve everything, like everything, with every person in every relationship and every situation? Or are there times where it's best to just let it go?
Yeah. Well, I think you're hitting on something really important. I think we need to be able to just, if we've gone a few rounds, it depends on the stakes of the situation. I think that sometimes you say, "Oh, there's Leslie being Leslie again." You have
Mhm.
some little way, whether it's an uncle or a sister, or that probably in this life they're not going to change, and you love them,
Yeah.
or you need to work with them, and you can just kind of cut them some slack,
Yeah.
like I think you'd probably hope people would do for you.
So what I'm hearing you say is, listening is really important without the monkey mind going. Okay. We're already thinking of what we're going to say next without really listening, right? You're saying that. You're saying in moments where like you're feeling like they don't get me and I'm frustrated, there's taking breaths that you need to be doing that as well, right? And what else are tips to do when we're in like these conflict situations? And I know you talk about this also in your book.
Yeah, I think there are so many pieces to understanding someone, but I think one of the things that any of us who are on the path of really wanting to grow in our skills, there's a lot of personal work that we need to do. And one of the things is just to even notice your own biases. Like, why are you so certain you're right? And what evidence do you even have that you are?
Mm-hmm.
What might be something about a piece of what they're saying that could be true? You know,
Yeah.
are you willing to give them maybe you disagree intensely, but maybe there's a small piece that you can agree with. And I think that's really something we can all work on
Yeah.
is is really trying to find the commonalities because
Mm-hmm.
I'm somebody who almost always can find a commonality, surprisingly. I think
Yeah.
they're like maybe it's because I believe they're there, but that ability to connect as a human to human is really important in terms of building.
And to me, that also relates to, the ability to say, I'm sorry, right? Or I forgive you, or to take that responsibility. I'm sorry I hurt you, even if you're thinking, well, they're the one who hurt me first, actually. So they're, but it really ties into that, into one's ability to really be able to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. There's lots of different ways to say I'm sorry, and there's some really bad ways, and there's some really good ways. Like I took a full day class on apologies for my
Oh,
conflict, like 8 hours. You
oh,
don't even think you could actually learn that much. But there's a lot what they call empty apologies. I'm sorry for what you think I might have done to you. I mean, I apologize for anything that hurt you. It doesn't give a lot. And so apologizing really with kind of specifics. When I did this, I could see that that really hurt. I'd really appreciate if we can actually, you know, talk to each other right away when those kinds of things happen so we can repair it. Um, if you need to figure out what you have to do in the future. Um, so I think it's really important to learn how to apologize, but apologies can help
yeah.
when
Yeah.
there's
I mean, I understand that point that it could also be like, well, I'm sorry, but what you're saying. I think what you're saying is you need to say, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry for exactly that thing that they think you were creating in the relationship. And really, so they really understand, you understand what they were,
Yeah,
upset.
I had this situation where, and I share it in my book, where have you had that feeling with someone where there's an undercurrent of tension?
Sure.
Like there's something going on. So I use a lot of river words to talk about conflict. And so the undercurrent is something you feel, and they may or may not feel it. And a lot of times we try to override it and pretend it's not there. Well, we're not really going to have an authentic conversation when we override it.
Yeah.
So I was in a retreat center with a friend. We had a breakdown, and this was kind of a desire to repair our relationship, many decade relationship. But through the whole time, I felt this undercurrent that I was tense, and we were sharing a room, and I was journaling, and I was talking to myself, and as a coach.
Mhm.
Um, we really weren't talking about it during the time, but after the retreat, we had lunch. And I asked her, "How do you think we were together during that time?" I was
Mm.
tense the whole time. She said, "I thought it was great." I went, "Really?" And then I shared the undercurrent that I felt. I won't go into all of it, but basically, she finally admitted that something I had done quite a while ago that had really created some of the problems to begin with were still residual in her.
Yeah.
I was feeling it.
Yeah.
And we really needed to have a pretty powerful apology conversation. I needed to apologize because it was something that had happened. And she thought she had let it go, but she had not.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
that became really important for our friendship to clear the air.
And that took a lot of courage on your part to bring it up again.
It did. It did. And yet, this is my work. And so if I can't walk my talk,
Yeah, that's
all
true.
kinds of situations, I feel
Yeah.
like an imposter.
Yeah.
So, but I know that our relationship is so much closer. In fact, we just went to the Yuba River. We just went on a little mini vacation together. But yeah, so I think these things are really important, and they're hard depending on the person. And especially some people won't cop to, they won't be willing to admit.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you that. Suppose it really was from your side that there was undercurrent still, and suppose she really was at peace in your relationship, then what?
Yeah, then it's my work. I have
Yeah.
some personal work to do about this.
Mhm.
It's not like you were saying, not everything's processing,
Yeah,
it could be exhausting to live that way.
yeah.
And there's a coach that he has a saying. He sort of says, "Oh well." It's kind of like let it go, and it's like don't sweat the small stuff. At a certain point, if we're perseverating on something, can we just let it go?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great example of it. Sometimes we just need to. Yeah. But that definitely took courage. So tell me about your book.
Well, I came up with the name River Logic Partners for my consulting firm after hearing Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist teacher, famous, many
Mhm.
people know. She was talking about how some people live with what she called rock logic. Now, that's when they're really rigid and not willing to move from their position, maybe fundamentalist in their thinking. And she contrasted it, and she said, we're all like this, with sometimes we're like water logic, where we're more fluid and open and adaptable. And as I listened to the talk, I remember writing notes and went, OMG. So I started realizing that is a theme for me. And so I started
Mm.
playing with water words, and came up with river logic. And then I started, my first coach, when I was self-employed, said, love it. Tell me what it means. And so I started to blog, and I started playing with river words like the damming in relationships, and the undercurrents and confluence when we come together, and the rapids. What happens when we hit the rapids? And I had 24, 25 blogs that made me realize, wow, I think I have a book. And unfortunately, it took 6 more years to write the book.
I'm not- yeah. I
I
get
Yeah, but I really started looking at how do we move from that place of rock logic to river logic? How do we move from that kind of rigid to more fluid? And so the book is really the journey, 7 principles, each of us taking along the river. And the river becomes just an incredible metaphor and model, because the river is kind of the relentless journey to the sea
yeah.
against all odds, right? Pollution and toxicity and the damming, and yet it's just on its journey.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, and people could find your book where?
So it's on Amazon. So
Mhm.
Logic: Tools to Transform Resistance and
Yes.
Create Flow in All of Our Relationships. My website, which is River
Yeah. I
Logic.
just put it up there, riverlogictools.com.
Yeah. So I have River Logic tips. I have, so as I continue to blog on these interpersonal issues, there are tips. Um, you can buy my book. Yeah, you can see other things that I'm up to.
So do you work one-on-one with people, or do you work also with companies as well? Or like if somebody wanted to work with you, what is it that you actually do?
Yeah, so conflict coaching or emotional intelligence coaching, I'm certified in that. And that is a passion of mine. I also work inside organizations.
Okay.
I create leadership programs. So that's been my background, leadership academies. But a lot of it really kind of interestingly in organizations really revolve around communication as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
How do we build our team? What happens when we have someone on our team that's really challenging? I mean, I just was working with the Bureau of Land Management, and they have a great team except one person. And this one person, I had a team coaching situation. I saw how this one person challenges the rest of the team
Yeah.
and the leader. And so these issues are everywhere, right?
Yeah. So you were able to work with this one person or with the group?
Yeah, so I worked with the group, I've worked with the leader, and I think in terms of this person, there is, there is maybe a reason he will choose to change, but he's a very challenging person. And I'm not sure. I think that if the leader can kind of coach him out would be probably the best approach. Um,
Yes.
but this particular leader really was conflict avoidant. So our work was really about, you have somebody who's challenging, you have to be able to meet them.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So our work was really building some kind of the skills of being able to name what's going on and make clear declarations
Yeah.
and requests.
Yes. Yeah, no, this whole topic is so crucial, isn't it, to everything, whether you're working or you have a virtual assistants like I have in my business, whether it's your own relationships, right? Personal relationships with whoever, your family members or whatever. It's just, we're always being faced all the time with like relationship breakdowns and misunderstandings. So it's so fabulous what you're doing, basically to help people to connect more and to connect more with their hearts. So I want to just thank you for the work you're doing because it's really crucial in the world.
I love that you use that word and you use the word heart because I feel like that is where it's at. Like, even
Mhm.
with a very challenging person, I have somebody in my family that's really challenging, but I love her. And so I have to keep remembering that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the bigger picture that you love her, that you just love her. So we're going to wrap up now, and I'm just wondering if there is anything else you would like to leave the audience with, or any other tips or anything you would like to say.
Well, one of the things that I say in my book is that the quality of our communication is only equal to the quality of our presence. And so we all, myself included, have work to do. Like, how do we choose to be present with each other? Because I don't know how it will work without that. So there's some, I really feel like on a personal level, especially with the intensity of the times, that we all need practices. And they're probably very personal, like what we choose to do.
Yes, yes. And when you say presence with ourselves, what do you mean exactly?
Well, one of the things that a lot of it is just thinking about someone who is present with you versus someone who is not present with you. And
Mm-hmm.
usually it's when you feel seen and when you
Yes,
feel heard.
yes,
And those qualities that we talk about with listening can help with that. But there's something, the idea of empty your cup, that you can actually be there. Sometimes I had one client who said he just literally clears his desk when he's about to have like a hard conversation or an important conversation so that
Mhm.
he's fully present.
Yes, right. All the other stuff is away, right? So you can just really be there.
And somebody else told me they have this little song they put on, which I
Yeah,
thought was great. But
yeah,
yeah, I think we all, like, for me, just the breath, the breathing is really important. My feet on the ground, my hands in
yes,
my lap,
yes.
listening to whatever the sounds are. So yeah, we all have ways of coming to
To
presence.
presence, yeah. I was thinking the other day that really the thing that every single human being desires is the same, and that is to feel valued and to be seen. I really think that that is the crux of our needs, our inner needs inside of us. And so what you're doing with your work is you're just basically helping people be together so they can be more seen, they can be more heard, they can be more acknowledged, and they can be more loved. And that we can be seen, we could be acknowledged, we can be felt valued as well. So I want to thank you very much for coming on today, sharing all your wisdom. Definitely, everybody, check out riverlogictools.com there. Thank you again, Denise. And I will see everybody next time on She Rises. Thank you so much.